Hey guys, what's up? It's the Tominator coming at you with another bodybuilding breakdown. So this was your top call-out at the 2021 Tampa Pro. From left to right, we've got 4th place Maxx Charles, 1st place Iain Valliere, 2nd place Phil Clahar, and 3rd place Charles Griffin. And much has been made of Iain Valliere winning this contest. I've seen very mixed opinions on social media. And yes, it is Valliere, not Valliere. Will someone please tell that goof NSP to stop butchering his name? The guy is Canadian, not Hispanic, so I don't get why he'd pronounce a double L like a Y. Anyway, it's fair to say this wasn't Iain's best shape ever. If I recall correctly, he was certainly sharper at last year's Olympia, and some of the pictures and low-resolution footage have him looking smooth and relatively unconditioned. However, when you see close-ups and higher-res photos, it's clear that he was in shape. His skin looked tight everywhere and the muscles were hard, so even if the separation wasn't the best at times, you can't say he wasn't conditioned. The surprise of the show, though, was Phil Clahar. I'm sure I've seen this guy before, but honestly the name didn't ring a bell, so he really came out of nowhere and legitimately challenged for the title. The dude is also pretty old. He's already around 46 or something, getting into Dexter Jackson territory there, so I don't see him being much of a threat in the future. Not to rain on his parade because he brought it and looked incredible, but it would be a minor miracle if he could improve or even duplicate this performance again at his age. But anyway, let's get into the comparisons. So in this front double, I apologize for the low quality, but don't worry, it gets a bit better after this pose. What I like about Iain here, though, is his outline, especially the X-frame formed by his lats, waist, and quads. He's got the cleanest flow of anyone through those areas. The arms are also huge and full, and the delts look awesome too. On the negative side, the calves are non-existent. It doesn't hurt him that much in this lineup, since nobody else has great calves exactly either, so he catches a bit of a break there. But he also needs more bicep separation, and the chest looks pretty shallow. But my biggest pet peeve is the way that he holds his arms. I don't get it. Look at the right one, it's practically at a 45-degree angle, and it's not being presented properly. Pull back your elbows, man. If an old-timer like Clahar can manage it, then you've got no excuse. So I don't think that's a flexibility issue, it's just flawed posing technique, and it's easily fixable. Speaking of Phil Clahar, he looks really good in this shot. Super broad across the chest, and when you go elbow to elbow, he's got some really nice separation through the biceps and the thighs too. But the midsection is a little bloated, and I think it costs him here. It hampers his V-taper and makes his legs look that much smaller. I mean, they are a little smaller compared to someone like Iain's, but the bigger waistline doesn't help. Charles Griffin on the far right also suffers from this problem. The dude is built like a compact tank, but his wide waist really compromises his flow in this shot. Some bigger arms would have helped to offset that, like if his guns were the size of Iain's, that'd make a difference. But as it is, I'd have to place this guy at the bottom. Nothing really wrong with the shot for him, no major weaknesses or missing body parts, it's just more of a structural thing. Maxx Charles on the left is a contender, however. It's hard to tell because of the other bodybuilders standing behind him, obscuring his outline, but Max looks pretty strong right now. The best midsection in the call-out, hands down, massive biceps, and since he's brought up his quads in recent months, pretty good balance and completeness. I'd need a better look to make a definitive call, but based on this, I would give Max a slight lead, with Iain in second and Phil in third. If Valliere just opened up a little more and pulled back his arms, he'd probably be winning this, though. Okay, so on to the front lat spread, and thankfully the video quality picks up from here. This one had me scratching my head because they all look good. You could reasonably make a case for any one of them. Griffin shows tremendous width through the lats and just looks so powerful in this pose. Solid separation in the legs as well. Clahar is the tallest and widest with the best shoulder-to-waist ratio and the most diced quads. Iain arguably fills out the pose the best with a great taper and his only real weak point being the calves. And Max, for my money, looks the most aesthetic with the tight waistline, massive arms and shoulders, and the striated pecs. So who's taking this one? I think from a muscularity perspective, it's got to be Iain or possibly Griffin. But from a pure conditioning perspective, I would go with Clahar and then Max. Overall, I could see the judges giving it to Valliere since he really doesn't have any major weaknesses, but personally, I prefer Phil Clahar here. His chest is better, the quads are more separated, he's wider, and looks more conditioned through the upper body. Maybe this stream just wasn't doing Iain justice, but hey, I wasn't there at the show, so this is what we have to work with. Moving into the side chest, this is where Valliere is going to be tough to beat since his side shots are his best. I would probably have him winning even though his chest isn't the greatest, but everything else looks amazing. The glute ham tie-in, the side leg, the primary shoulder and arm, that meaty far forearm crossing over the body. These are features that nobody else can surpass. Clahar's got a nice thick set of pecs and a mean rear delt, but the limbs aren't quite as good as Iain's. Charles Griffin is thick as hell, but is lacking separation, and I'm not a big fan of the closed-off stance. You guys have probably heard me mention this before, but I really prefer it when guys twist and open up more in the side chest. This is one pose where the arms don't need to be held airtight to the body. All that's doing, it's creating an illusion where he ultimately ends up appearing smaller rather than larger, which is never something you want in a men's open lineup. Maxx looks really good also, probably the best chest in the whole callout, but his lower body is lagging behind conditioning-wise. So yes, I would go with Iain this time. This Clahar guy though, what is up with all the head nodding? I get that he's feeling good about himself, but he looks like a bobblehead. From the rear though, he has reason to be cocky since he utterly trounces them all with some sensational back development. He honestly reminds me of Joel Stubbs. Both were taller bodybuilders who were kind of weak in the leg department, but had some of the sickest backs of all time. Well, I don't know if Clahar has earned the right to be mentioned in that discussion just yet, but he looked absolutely crazy here. There's no contest between him and Iain. Even in the lower half, Iain has more mass, but Phil is sharper through the hamstrings. I give him the back double easily, with Charles Griffin a solid second. Griffin also has an amazing back with some enviably low lat insertions, and you can see that he's dialed in through the traps, delts, arms, and hamstrings very nicely here. This might even be the best Charles Griffin to date. I'm not sure he's ever been in better shape before. That said, the glutes are still a little soft. This is a fairly weak pose for Maxx. The lats just do not look good right now. They're super short and not very wide. Even Iain shows better lower lat development. So the order for this one is pretty straightforward in my eyes. Clahar, Griffin, Iain, then Maxx. The rear lat spread is again a home run for Clahar. Look at the width, look at the definition down the center of his back. This guy was polished, and his back is just too much for them. Griffin is wide and dense as hell through the traps, but not quite as defined, so he once again lands in second. After that, it's a sharp drop-off to Iain and Maxx, where I'd give Iain the edge simply because his lats are better. Surprisingly, Maxx probably has him beat downstairs, though, through the hamstrings anyway. Turning back around, Iain gets some redemption in the side try. I don't see him losing this shot. The lower body is just too big and polished, and his presentation is excellent here with the streamlined midsection. It's funny because in both the side shots, which are his strengths as I've mentioned, the main body part is actually somewhat of a weak point for him, be it the chest in the side chest or the triceps in the side try, where you can note right now that he doesn't have much to offer in the way of a triceps horseshoe. But nevertheless, the rest of his physique looks so damn good, it carries him to the victory. After that, I would go with either Maxx or Griffin, with Phil bringing up the rear this time. That said, it's pretty close between all four of them. Nobody looks bad here. The ab and thigh, I think, has to go to Maxx Charles, since he's the only one with properly formed abs. Iain's look surprisingly cloudy, and you can barely make out any definition. They were even looking a little distended a moment ago as he was breathing in heavily. Likewise with Phil, who looks fine when he's fully locked in, but during the transitions, you can definitely catch some stomach distension. Griffin would have to be last here because his midsection is the blockiest and his ab genetics are not very good. It's one of his biggest weak points. So yeah, Maxx Charles with upgraded thighs basically wins this pose by default. After that, take your pick between Iain or Phil. I think it's close enough between those two depending on when you freeze the frame. This side variation is better for Iain because his obliques were more defined than his abdominals, but Clahar clearly has the more separated midsection overall, so I am leaning towards him here, even though the legs look pretty thin right now. But once again, just to clarify, I think Maxx Charles is the clear winner in the ab and thigh. Max is also tough to beat in the most muscular. He's been crushing this pose all year, and this contest was no exception, although I do think he was a little sharper at the Chicago Pro. Iain looks good here too, and ironically his midsection is showing a lot more definition now than it was a moment ago. Clahar looks amazing with those round upper arms and delts, but his midsection lets him down, and the thighs are fading. They don't look as sharp as they did at the beginning of the callout. That's probably just fatigue setting in. Griffin is like a compressed, stockier version of him here, with slightly better wheels, but a worse midsection. I'm giving Max this variation, and he takes the crab as well, even though he only hit it for like half a second. Would have liked to have seen that held a lot longer because it's an outstanding shot for him. Iain also looks more effective in this hands clasped. The upper body's thick and massive, and the lower body's fired up again with some nice separation through the quads. I'd put him in second, and probably Clahar in third. So overall, yes, I can see Iain doing just enough to squeak by here, but I wouldn't exactly call it a blowout or even a super convincing victory. The only blowouts that occurred were courtesy of Phil Clahar in the back poses. Everything else was pretty hotly contested, and the only shots I would outright give to Iain were the two side ones. But that said, he was very close in the front lat spread, front double, and most muscular, and arguably could have been said to have won all those as well. The only thing I would change after reviewing this footage is that I would have flip-flopped Maxx Charles and Charles Griffin, putting Max in third. Indeed, if you check out the scorecard, it seems that at least one of the judges felt this way, but at the end of the day, it's not that big of a deal. So that's my take on the 2021 Tampa Pro. What do you guys think? Did Iain deserve to win it? Or would you have gone with Phil Clahar or somebody else? Let us know in the comments below, and as always, thank you for watching. Until the next time, this has been the Tominator signing off, and I'll be back.